Hi guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I am here to do my October wrap-up part 1, so all the books I have read in the first half of October. So I have 6 books to talk about today, 2 of which are audiobooks, which is actually a bit unusual because normally I don't have 2 audiobooks so close together, but these audiobooks that I read were quite short and quite engrossing, so I ended up listening to them as much as I could, so I got through them quicker than I would normally in audiobooks. Normally an audiobook does take me a few weeks to read. The first book I'm going to talk about is an audiobook, and that was Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay, and this was read by Aaron Bennett. This is a book that a lot of people have been talking about lately because it is eerily similar to the current pandemic that we are living through at the moment. So in this book we are following two main characters, Romola and Natalie. Natalie is pregnant and Romola is a doctor and is Natalie's best friend. And at the start of the book we learn that there has this virus, this heightened rabies virus that is now affecting humans to like a really deadly degree. It has a very short incubation period. People are getting symptoms within an hour of being bitten or being exposed to the virus. A lot of it is handled to start, things like quarantine, stocking up on groceries and pharmaceuticals and things like that. It's so similar to what was happening at the start, like government mandated quarantines, curfews, all that kind of thing. It's very similar to like what a lot of us have been living through the last few months. So it was quite eerie to listen to all of that, I have to say. And if you are someone who has a lot of kind of pandemic anxiety, like I know a lot of people do, this one might be a little bit much, particularly the start of this book where you are really hearing about all those measures that are being put in place, the fear among the public of not really knowing what is happening, knowing the extent of the pandemic, things like that. This book we are following, as I said, Natalie, who is pregnant, and at the start of the book her and her husband are both attacked by someone who's infected by the virus and ends up killing her husband and biting Natalie. And Natalie is in a race against time to get to Romola, and then both of them are going to get Natalie to the hospital so she can get a vaccine, hopefully in time to save her and her child. This book is really intense, it's really fast paced, it takes place over just a few hours, as to the starting point where Natalie gets bitten and the hours following that where we and the other characters in the book are trying to figure out if she has been affected, did she get the vaccine in time, what's going to happen to her child, what's going to happen to the world as things get worse and worse in the book. I was a little bit lucky that I haven't read any Paul Tremblay before, so I didn't have any expectations in terms of his writing, though I do really want to read The Cabin at the End of the Woods, and I especially want to read it now after reading this. But I ended up just really enjoying this book, and I think the fact I read it on audiobook and it was this kind of race against time kind of feeling, there was an intensity to the book, I think it really just lent itself really well to audiobook, and that's why I enjoyed it so much. I found myself just like really wanting to go out for my daily walks so I could listen to this book, which is always a good thing. I just really love books set around pandemics, books set around viruses and illnesses, particularly like zombie-like illnesses. I love zombie books and zombie media. I actually haven't read any of that in a really long time. I used to try and seek it out and I haven't done that in a while, and this kind of reminded me of how much I do love that kind of genre of pandemics and zombies and things like that, and this kind of almost end of the world feeling in a book. And yeah, I definitely want to try and read more of that because, as I said, this reminded me that I do really love this type of fiction. So I give this 4 out of 5 stars and I really recommend it, particularly on audiobook. The next book I read was The Enigma Game by Wein. This is a book set in the Codename Verity series, but it is chronologically set before Codename Verity takes place, though I would still recommend to read it after you've read Codename Verity, because I think the characters that show up in this book that are also in Codename Verity, you have a deeper appreciation of who they are and like what is to come if you've already read that story. In this book we are following a young girl, 15-year-old Eloisa, who has found herself completely alone in London after her parents are killed in 2 separate bombing incidents during World War II. Eloisa is biracial, her father is Jamaican and her mother is English, and she has found it hard to find work and to find something to support herself because people have been particularly racist towards her and won't employ her. Finding this position to look after an elderly woman in Scotland. So Eloisa and Jane travel to Scotland, where they are going to be staying with Jane's niece, and there they are very near this airbase. One of these pilots, who is Jamie, is someone who we've met in Codename Verity, is a character in Codename Verity, and he is one of the main characters in this book. That Eloisa ends up in Scotland, something happens where there is a German soldier that lands in this airbase, and he is a spy for England, and he delivers this type of machine which enables people to know German code, and Eloisa ends up taking upon herself to figure this out because she's really clever and she's able to do it and deliver these messages to Jamie. I really love this book. I just love Wein. She's one of my favourite writers, and I think the way she writes young people in World War II fiction is just so great. She gives them this like story, she gives them purpose. I think in particular in Louisa's, there's a lot of like emotion in Louisa's story because she is grieving for her parents. She's also trying to figure out her place in the world. She's also trying to figure out her place in the world as someone who might not be typically British in a way, and is scared that how like her colour is going to hold her back, and she kind of, it's almost like a journey of self-acceptance, a journey of that she figures out that she can do so much more and she is capable of so much more than she thinks. Wein is a really emotional writer. She's able to just like create these characters that get under your skin, and then she's able to just like tear your heart out with her books. Like there was points in this book where I was really close to tears, and the exact same can be said for all the other books that I've read from her, Codename Verity and Rose Under Fire. If you enjoy World War II fiction, I definitely recommend this, but as I said, I definitely think people should read this after already reading Codename Verity. I think it's just great because the characters that do show up in this book, they do show up in Codename Verity, and there's something special about these characters showing up. So yeah, it's like there's a lot of emotions in this book. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend. The next book I read was When Beauty Tamed the Beast by Eloisa James. This is the second book in her fairy tale series, though all of the books in the series are not connected. They are all just inspired by fairy tales, and this one is obviously inspired by Beauty and the Beast. So in this book we are following a young woman called Lynette, whose reputation has been ruined because of a rumour that isn't true. She and her family have realised that she seems to be unmarriageable. People that like aren't interested in like asking for her hand, and obviously for a young woman at this time that was really important. She ends up getting engaged to this man called Piers, who lives in this castle in Wales, and without even knowing him, it's kind of arranged between her father and his father. And when she goes to visit him in his castle, she realizes that his nickname the Beast kind of suits his demeanour in a way, because he is very cranky, he's not interested in marrying her, he does not want to marry her, but at the same time he's a little bit intrigued by her, and she's determined to try and make him fall in love with her. So she stays at the castle, and the two of them kind of dance around each other a bit because there is a lot of chemistry between them. This was just so much fun to read, as I've found with all of the Regency romances that I've read. They're just a breath of fresh air, they're just a little bit of fun, and again I just really loved the relationship here. I loved the chemistry between Lynette and Piers, the witty conversation. Lynette is like, she's described as being this being an extraordinarily beautiful woman who, you know, she just walks in the door and every single head turns to her, every single man in the room wants to dance with her or wants to be with her, yet at the same time she is really clever, she's a reader, she, you know, loves knowledge, and she's actually quite prickly. She knows how to just like play people in a way, yet she's never met someone who is able to kind of deal with her the way Piers is able to deal with her. There are generally like parts of this book, like it kind of takes a turn a bit, and it actually kind of takes a turn in like a pandemic sort of way. There ends up being this like flu epidemic in this book, and again, like I was like, why are these like pandemic stories just like following me at this stage? But there was definitely this kind of, there was this like flu story that ended up happening, and there were parts of this book where I was generally like really afraid for the characters, though like there was only ever one way that this type of book is going to end, but it generally did kind of leave me a little bit anxious, and just because it was written so well. This definitely plays into the trope of these, like, you know, these two characters who say, oh, like, we're so not suited, we'd be terrible together, yet at the same time they're completely mad about each other and they just won't admit it to themselves. So that can get a little bit annoying, but at the same time, just the dance they were doing with each other and the chemistry between them was done well enough that the story was able to carry through. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read the next book in the series. The next book I read was the second audiobook I read in this half of the month, and that was I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Iain Reid, and this was narrated by Candice Taxon. So this is one that I wanted to read because I've heard a few people talk about it, and it's always one of these ones that have just really intrigued me because people either seem to really hate it or really love it, and I didn't know where I would fall on the spectrum. And the movie of this has also come out on Netflix, and I thought I wanted to watch it, but I tried to watch it yesterday and I think I got like 20 minutes in and I turned it off. I think we'll watch it another time, but maybe not right now. So this book, it's a short book, it's only like a 6-hour audiobook, and we are following this woman who is going to meet her boyfriend's parents for the first time. They've only been dating maybe about 2 months or so, not very long. We are kind of following her inner thoughts or inner monologue while she's on this trip. All we know is that she's thinking about ending things. She's thinking about ending this relationship with her boyfriend Jake, and she's kind of trying to figure out why exactly she feels like this and kind of some other weird things that are happening in her life. The story just kind of gets weirder and weirder as she goes to Jake's parents' house, and things just don't seem to be, you know, completely right, and this like feeling of unease and like that things are not right basically carries throughout the entire book. Again, I think this one was really good for an audiobook listen. I think it just plays really well because, and I actually listened to part of this in the car when I was driving. A lot of the book is told while the narrator is also in the car and like taking a car journey, so again that was like just a good decision on my part because it just suited the story and the style of the story. And this is one that's kind of quite engrossing because like nothing really happens in this book. You're just kind of like following this girl's thoughts and like what she thinks about different things, but at the same time I couldn't stop listening, and then it just kind of gets weirder and weirder and weirder, and the end of it is definitely really strange. Like some people are just like, they don't understand it, they say it hurts their brain, and it definitely does. And I did kind of, there was a couple of times where like I actually rewound it a little bit and I would listen to it again because I wanted to figure out exactly what had happened. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed my reading experience of it, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. But I can't say I completely understand everything that happened in it, but I didn't hate it. And then the last full book I read this month so far was The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. This is Stuart Turton's second novel. He is the author of The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is a much loved booktube book. And this book is also a historical mystery book, similar to Evelyn Hardcastle, but there's a lot of differences as well. They're not really connected in any way. So in this book we are following a character called Aaron Hayes. We learn that his partner Sammy Pipps, who was kind of like this detective at the time, this is set in the 1600s, I think it's like 1647, has been charged for some unknown crime. He is going to be transported across to Amsterdam, where he's apparently going to be killed for his crime. And Hayes is determined on this sea voyage that he is going to figure out what it is that Sammy Pipps has actually been charged for, and he's going to absolve him because he obviously didn't do it. He has no idea what he's been charged for, but they know that whatever it is, it's not something that he's actually done. But when they get to this ship, there's basically this ominous message from this leper, and he basically tells everyone that everyone on the ship is going to die, that it's going to be haunted by this demon. And then promptly after that, this leper bursts into flames. And then when they investigate further, they find out that this leper had no tongue, so he shouldn't have actually been able to speak, yet he did, and he delivered this really weird message. So at the start of the book, this like really ominous message is shared. It doesn't seem to be right. There seems to be something supernatural at work, and obviously it kind of spooks everyone going onto this journey, and things kind of just develop from there, where the ship journey is kind of like a lot of like kind of bad luck things happen. There seems to be something kind of almost haunting the ship in a way, and we're also introduced to some other characters like Sarah and Leah, who are the Governor General's wife and daughter. The Governor General is who charged Sammy Pipps with this crime and who is transporting him to be killed, and he is not a very nice man. Sarah ends up kind of teaming up with Aaron Hayes to kind of discover what this mystery is, who this old Tom devil is who is apparently haunting the ship. So again, I really enjoyed this book, and it was just really kind of dark and mysterious and thrilling, and it gave me some like jump scare moments. There were some really creepy jump scare moments in it that I thought were like really, really well done, and particularly for this time of year, it's just a really great book to read because it's kind of dark. There's a lot of like, there's just this feeling of like danger in the air when you're reading it. There's all these people on the ship, they've nowhere to go, they're running out of supplies, you know, like the storms are chasing them. Like even the feeling on the ship is like described really, really well, because there's not a lot of good feeling between crew and like between the sailors and the passengers, or the sailors and the soldiers that are on board. There's like this air of danger constantly from the sailors, and like at any moment they could just turn on everyone and like kill and pillage and like do terrible things basically. I like how the mystery ended up playing out at the end of the book. At first I was like, oh, it's a little bit over the top, maybe it's a little bit like unbelievable, but then when the more I thought about the mystery and the more I thought about how everything kind of like weaved together and how it all fitted in, it was just so impressively done, and I just thought it was written really, really well. Like Stuart Turton is able to write this mystery and have everything just kind of joined together in like this perfect bow, and everything just like means something. He does that really, really well. He did it with Evelyn Hardcastle, and he's done it with this book as well. I love the characters in this book. I loved Aaron Hayes a lot, and he and Sammy Pipps kind of reminded me a little bit of Locke and John from the Gentleman Bastard series, where you have someone smaller, more delicate, very, very clever like Locke Lamora and Sammy Pipps, and they were always shadowed by like this bigger, burlier, brawnier character like Jean, and in this case Aaron Hayes, where that person, while they're muscly and like they're a big threat, they're also really, really clever, and often that cleverness is overlooked and underestimated by everyone around them. I also just really love the female characters in this book. I thought they were really strong, and they had like so much going for them. I really liked Sarah. I liked her involvement in the mystery. I just really loved her character strength and the knowledge that she had, her cleverness, and the same with Leah. She's often described as like she's a little genius basically, and she has to hide that because people often like look at really clever women accused of being witches or accused of these really terrible crimes, so they try and hide Leah's cleverness, and like that kind of the struggle and the frustration of that is really shared by Sarah, and I just really like that kind of part of the story. So yeah, I really love this. I really recommend it for this particular month, but like it's just a really great mystery all around, and I gave that one a 4 out of 5 stars. So that's everything I have read so far. Please let me know if you guys have read any of these, what you think. Leave a comment down below and we can chat, and I'll see you guys again next time.